In modern day, we describe black as not only a colour, but a race. Long story short, race is a social construct. It's not a real thing. And the idea of people being other goes back to some deeper pathology developed by Europeans in the 1600s. There were no black people before that point. But why does any of this matter? Well, being black isn't something you have to claim. It's actually something that's been labelled onto you. In the same manner, being white is something that's labelled onto you. Now, when you start talking about brown people, it gets a bit weirder because we like to say black, white, Asian. But wait a second. Asia is a place, but there is no white as a place and there is no black as a place. So it's clearly a mind game, right? Because I'm brown and most white people are a shade of barley or brown too. What does that even matter? It matters a lot because it informs how people perceive you. It informs how you perceive yourself, the choices you can and can't make, the places you can and can't go. One thing I find like slightly interesting and a little bit ironic, we're in the Africa section of the British Museum, but guess what's not down here? Egypt, right? Why the separation? Why do you think that might be? I'm not saying that this stuff isn't really beautiful and profound, because it is, but it does show us in a certain light, which is interesting. And I must say, there was lots of interesting things to see, but truth be told, I don't really feel connected to anything I actually experienced in there. In all honesty, it's like, obviously there is a level of separation between you and what you're looking at because it's in glass and behind glass and such, but even that sort of level of alienation is just kind of unavoidable. And even though I've looked at things that are considered black history, African history, Egypt, even some Islamic, Persian and Syrian history, it just feels so alien. It's like, it matters, but it doesn't feel like it matters, do you know? And one of the real things you have to deal with is the fact that how these things got here in the first place, which makes it a little bit more uncomfortable to deal with. As absolutely insane as all of this stuff is and how it looks, what's more insane is the fact that this stuff here is literally all stolen stuff. I don't even think we done like 50% completion of everything in there is to see. I can tell you this, from what I did see in there, it's not boring, but maybe it just wasn't what I was looking for, you know? And that's probably the problem, the main problem. What is it that I'm looking for, you know? Now, it's not exactly like how it was in the 50s and the 40s, with signs saying no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. No, it's not exactly like that. But it's still psychologically like that. Those things don't just disappear, they don't dissipate. And if you pay any like bit of attention to the modern world, you can see how these racist sentiments still live and exist inside of the British population. All you need to do is maybe watch some GB News, read the comments, go on TikTok, read the comments. The minds of people who hide behind anonymous avatars and anonymous names really speak what their hearts and their minds feel. Whereas in the street, yeah, you get one or two people who won't really pet to tell you what they think, what they feel. But on the internet, you really get an understanding. And being that I'm the type of person I am and I interact with strangers on the internet, I see it myself. I built up a nice little folder of this like racist comments from strangers on the internet. But what does that have to do with anything? That issue is subconsciously bubbling in society. It's like binary. It's in the background, the zeros and ones of the foundation of this thing that we call modern Britain. Do you think there is a growing far-right presence in the UK?
I think it's complicated. There's always been one. I'd say it's certainly more vocal and probably vocal beyond the actual scale of it.
In what way do you mean?
Well, I think there's always been a core within society that's just been on the far right, always has been, always will be. A lot of the issues that I saw when I was growing up in terms of National Front and people scrawling all kinds of stuff on the walls and stuff, and just assaulting people around the city. I think that's always been there.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience with that?
I think it's just the environment of the UK, going back in the 70s. I mean, where they wanting people from different ethnic groups to go home, etc. But as I say, for my background, I didn't directly experience much of that. I know my elder brother and sister did, but I didn't. And I think for the most part, when I was growing up, if there was someone trying to racially offend you as you're going around your day, normally friends or people on the street would step in. It just wasn't tolerated because that wasn't the sentiment held by most of the people.
What do you think it would take to remove the more extreme elements of far-rightism in the UK?
I don't think you can remove them because, I mean, people obviously have their fears and concerns, and it's just a worldview that a lot of people have. I think to find some way of like reducing the influence of the various talking shops and media outlets that peddle a lot of this nonsense.
How do you think we could do that?
I don't know. I think legislation is the only way, really, and maybe...
But do you think that then might impinge on free speech?
I don't think it does. I think a lot of the issue is the way that these stories are actually given priority in newspapers, or the certain angle in which a lot of the social issues that we have are discussed. And it generally seems to be framed through the discussion around immigration, when realistically, I don't think immigration is necessarily the issue. I think it's more about
I don't think it's ever been the problem.
About economics.
I would say so, yeah.
Invested interest, but...
What do you think about these kinds of ideologies scapegoating immigrants and like people from other countries?
That's just normal, but that's everywhere. Why do you get it in South Africa versus against Zimbabweans or Ugandans who come in and get jobs? You'll get it in India.
So just general xenophobia then?
Yeah. But it's a human trait.
It's very interesting in terms of perspective of, like you were saying, with the resurgence of ideas of the far right and stuff like that, how it's not actually anything new, and how he'd heard about it, and his older brothers and sisters had experienced the NF and stuff like that. So now that the question has come back to my mind, I wanted to ask him, what do you think happened to those people and where did they go in society? From my understanding, I know this might be more analysis based, but those people who were like prominent racists and figures in early 90s and in late 80s, I feel like it's a similar situation to what we saw in the Americas with people like Ku Klux Klan and them assimilating into the system at higher levels of work, becoming police force, becoming managers, becoming CEOs. And if those ideologies live on in these high places of power and position, then they get to cause disruption and further alienation by stopping opportunities for younger people that are of different ethnicities or from different countries. We also touched on the idea of xenophobia, and I agree with him. The idea of xenophobia isn't unique, and that's the problem. It's the lowest hanging fruit, so it's so easy to go to, and that's what gets a lot of people, wrapped up into these racist groups and ideologies. Although this is like one of our best features as a society and as a culture, it can also be one of our biggest Achilles heels. Maybe it's from like a hangover from World War II times, where it's just like keep calm and carry on. Because like if we give this too much energy, then it can hurt us kind of thing. So we're psychologically guarding ourselves by minimizing the actual situation, when really living through the situation is quite wild. So in order to like psychologically reconcile that, you kind of compartmentalize your experience from who you are and the time. As time moves on, you can kind of be like, yeah, there were these racist nut jobs running around, but they're nothing kind of thing. But when you step back, you're like, oh, actually these racist nut jobs that are running around on the streets are now actually like heads of major parties in the country and big movements that are still kind of causing problems. The idea that we have that we can just like, they're just a bunch of idiots and move them to the side is kind of wrong, but it's understandable because that is actually the essence of British culture to an extent. My leg's hanging off, don't worry about it, let's carry on going, But the problem with that mentality is if you don't actively make an effort to be aware of the situation, take it seriously, then diagnose it accurately, you can never provide a remedy to the problem, which is kind of what gives rise to these ideas of, oh, racism ain't a bad thing, it wasn't that bad, like slavery wasn't that bad, but it is, and it was,